Hello and welcome to Eye on South Asia. I'm Bhavna Vannan.
And I'm Sunil Halui.
Every week we bring to you the latest news, events, and all the latest happenings with South Asians living in North America. So Sunil, what's our latest news for this week?
Bhavna, this is again almost the end of the year. It has been generally a good year in the sense that we have not gone down further.
Right.
But the good news is that Indians continue to shine. And Robert Blake, who is in the Obama administration as their point person, and he was at the Asian Indian Foundation's annual fundraiser in Washington, D.C. And he had all the accolades, all the appreciation for the South Asian community, in particular the Indian community. And he very clearly reiterated that there is no diaspora community that is more successful and more inspiring than the Indian American community here in the United States. It is such a categorical statement for one particular community, which is hardly 3.5 million out of the 290 million. You know, we're talking about less than 1%. It's coming from somebody as important as that. He's the point man for the South Asia.
Right.
And he was so categorical and acknowledging, appreciating. And during the presentation, he talked about, obviously, Bobby Jindal, who is the governor of Louisiana, second term now. He won with the landslide victory. And then he talked about Nikki Haley, who is the governor now in South Carolina. And he said not only that we are, coming into the top positions in the government now with two governors is not a small thing. They're also the most influential caucus at the Capitol Hill.
Right.
Which is extraordinary statement for all of us. And he said, one of the first things when I became the Assistant Secretary of South Asia and Central Asian Affairs, one of the first goals was to work with the diaspora. And he appointed Mitul Desai. We covered Mitul Desai's appointment and his mandate in Eye on South Asia in the past. And Mitul is clearly appointed to help bridge relationship with the diaspora and develop community relationship between the administration and the various segments of the community, especially the NGOs.
Okay.
The administration understands that the community has its own small organizations which are non-profit, whether they are in the social side, whether they're in the cultural side, whether they're academic side. There are all these NGOs who are fronting the organization different segments, and Mitul is charged with the responsibility to help build the public-private relationship with these NGOs.
So he's the key person.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's a very good development, very good acknowledgement at the end of 2011, which should set the 2012 into a good.
Yeah, it's a very positive tone.
Absolutely, and coming from somebody like him.
Definitely.
Bhavna, continuing on the same front, we have in the past, I think a couple of weeks ago, mentioned that the Maryland governor who had announced a trip to India to develop business relationship, Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley. Maryland has a sizable Indian population over there. In fact, the whole greater Washington, D.C. area, including Washington, D.C. obviously, and Virginia and Maryland, they have very sizable, very influential Indian community. And they continue to work with the governor and influence his thinking about how to develop the economy of the state, and which is through a good working relationship with India, especially on the business sector. And Martin O'Malley, who himself went to India to join his group, there was about 100-member trade commission that had gone to India, and he joined them at some point, has wrapped up and made the announcement $60 million worth of trade deals. And some of them are going to be creating jobs in his own state. Now, on the overall scale of things, if you think 60 million is not a lot of money, but what it does is it sets up the tone. One state, another state, another state.
He's opened up the doors even just to have that trade relationship and
True. And
introduce things.
He went to Andhra Pradesh, which is the techie state, and then he went to Maharashtra, which is essentially Bombay. And they also worked with the different organizations in India, including the Jindals, which is primarily for developing the educational sector and exchange program. And actually in the first 9 months of this year, the Port of Baltimore itself, which is part of Maryland, saw $341 million in trade to and from India, which was in the same time last year $229 million, which is a 49% increase.
And he's really spanning across several different sectors. It's not just one, but he's covering.
Yeah, he, I think, touched base in, like you said, in the various sectors, and he met with the FICCI, which is the oldest and the national body with respect to when it comes to the trade and commercial exchange. And he also had members from the Montgomery College. They signed a memorandum of understanding with Wadhwani Foundation and Jindal Educational Initiatives for Jindal Steel and Power Limited. And the objective is strengthening the vocational education and instructor capacity in India and establishing the India Vocational Faculty Development Center for Excellence. So, you know, these sectors, whether you talk of the life sciences, you talk about the pharmaceutical industry, whether you talk of education, the governor has taken the initiative with all the members from different parts of his state to go to India and build a relationship. This is just the beginning, actually.
Right.
And I think very similar initiative is being taken by Virginia now, and I'm sure other states will follow suit. This is excellent development and sets again very good tone for 2012.
Definitely. And also it is fairly interesting in the sense that typically, I mean, jobs have been outsourced to India, and India's been looking to the US to look for jobs and stuff like that. But now it's kind of flipped, and they're bringing jobs here to Maryland and
which
the
is
States.
the whole idea behind this, to be able to develop the US's fragile or frail economy. Right now it's very weak, and they're looking for any kind of help.
A partnership.
We have the infrastructure, we have the setup, we have the technology, but we are looking to, through these programs, create more jobs for our own state in Maryland. Moving on to the next story, Bhavna, we are again touching base with the last weeks. We talked about the kind of, I would call it a disaster for India. The announcement they made for the foreign direct investment in multi-brand entry, including the Walmart, and it's been stalled right now, and they are looking to build consensus. It become a really political fiasco for the current government, despite the Prime Minister, who is the top economist in the world, favoring it, supporting it, administering it, but somehow or the other, the opposition was in no mood to take it on.
Right.
And it obviously has hurt the image of India. And Ron Summers, who is the president of the USIBC, United States India Business Council, which is the premier body. Again, I reiterate, Bhavna, this man is on a mission. He has got health problems, but for the last, I think, 15 years, he has done relentless work to develop the business corridor between the two countries.
Right.
Extraordinary work. And he was at the American Indian Foundation fundraiser in the Washington, D.C., and he said, look, this just impacts the relationship. It disheartens the investors in US who are looking at India to invest. There is tons of investments planned for India, but if such a thing can come in where such vital decisions are stalled, obviously
it really puts a freeze on things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he said, you know what, this happened in the past also, when the nuclear deal, which was passed with a lot of effort, and then the nuclear liability issues have come up, and then that has kind of slowed down the implementation of the nuclear deal, and they are looking at various ways to figure out how to protect. And it actually emanated from what happened in Japan, though. But honestly, one nuclear accident is not necessarily an example to set the course of unleashing a policy that India and America have evolved on the nuclear side. But again, it stalled everything.
Right.
But he gave credit to one thing. He said one of the best things that happened between India and America was at the 9/11. The then Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, was one of the first ones who made call to the US President that time, Mr. George Bush. And he said, you know, we have been in India facing terrorism for 45 years, and we understand the pain. We understand the ramifications, the repercussions of such a dastardly act that has taken place on 9/11 in New York when World Trade Center was brought down. And he said, you know, we need to have an exchange of program, exchange of support, exchange of ways to defend a terrorist attack. And just this kind of call and then the development of that corridor has progressed the relationship between India, United States and United States from $200 million at that time to $10 billion today. 10 years later, the trade on that corridor alone is about $10 billion. And
so if we can translate that to other industries.
Absolutely, which is what the whole idea was when the FDI was looking into the retail industry, and which obviously will happen right now because the political issue has been stopped.
So Summers seems still very optimistic about this.
He
says
will
that
make
it will
happen. Yeah, he will make it happen. That's Ron Summers. One of these days he'll come to the show and you meet him. He's just a magnetic personality and he understands India, and he will make sure that this lowest ebb will kind of go away. And he said, look, we have to agree that even United States of America under Obama administration is supporting India's bid to the permanent position in the Security Council. So he kind of showed a little carrot up there to India. Not that we're not aware of that, but the point is that we took a hit and we need to come out of it and go forward.
But he says the relationship is something that just ebbs and flows through, you know, ups and downs really, and this is just the down period, which they'll see, you know, a positive result in the end.
In 2012, that's what he's looking up to. On the other hand, on the neighboring front of Pakistan and US relationship, again, as we have been telling in the last few weeks, after the unfortunate hit to the 24 innocent soldiers of Pakistan who lost their lives, the relationship continues to dip further down and down and down. And the US Congressional panel has frozen $700 million worth of aid to Pakistan. Now, in the overall scheme of things, where you're talking about a sanction of $20 billion to Pakistan that was authorized by US in 2001 for the next 10 years, this is nothing. But what it does is the timing. You know, when the relationship are at a low, you're freezing the money, the grant, which is essentially out there to combat the Taliban terrorists. And this money was allocated for that reason. But they have said, look, we need to get it right and da-da-da. And for that reason, one of the demands they have put is about the IEDs, as they are called, which is called improvised explosive devices. These are raw bombs, which are typically used by
the bombs that they're referring to.
The terrorists, or including the Taliban's, use those against the US forces and obviously cause damage. And US is taken a stand. They need to freeze every effort to allow such bombs being created. Any kind of support by the Pakistan regime, which is primarily the military regime, to allow such kind of bombs to be developed or built, and also of course go after the terrorist organizations. But like I said, the timing is so bad. You know, after what happened, Osama bin Laden was killed in their own territory. So Pakistan administration was already facing a lot of internal air from the local people that how can America come and hit somebody in our own home, even though that was the most wanted terrorist. But at the same time, within no time, I should say, within 1.5 months, there is a hit to local 24 innocent soldiers. So the common man is up in arms against United States right now. So they told them, you know, leave this place, don't use our base, and you know, Shamsi base has been cleared, which was a vital point for US to work in Afghanistan. And one of the top personalities, which is Salim Saifullah, who is the chairman of Pakistan Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has said that he does not think this is a wise move, and it could hurt the ties further. And there should be instead efforts to increase cooperation, and he doesn't see anything coming out of this kind of a freeze.
All right, we're going to hold it right there. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back on Eye on South Asia.